Tim, we've got to start with the worst news that Donegal have had is the terrible situation where Paddy McBrearty's ACL has blown out, and you just feel for him because it felt like he was cresting to a peak in his career where he kind of fully was realising all of his own potential. It's a devastating blow really for Donegal and for him particularly.
It is indeed. It's one of those ones, I suppose, when you work with a player and you know them and you see them coming up from a very young age. It's almost like your children, and when they've got problems or something happens, it's just you take it so much to heart. And I think everybody in Donegal will be devastated with this news. Patrick obviously at the top of that list, and his family, and then the squad. He's just been exceptional for the county this year, and has blossomed into the player that everybody was hoping that he was going to be. He was always an exceptional player, but now he has become a leader within the team and has been able to step up and crunch moments and crunch games and show the way for Donegal. And so it's just one of those ones where it's hard to put into words, to be honest with you. He's at that age now, 24, 25 years of age. He's got the world at his feet, and it's a major setback for everybody.
Because he's not just a forward really, he's kind of obviously key to that game plan, and you could see where they were working situations where he would have been the specific person that they were using the chess pieces to break free, so it has a knock-on impact all over the field for them.
Absolutely, and handing the ball in critical areas of the field, and he was just like instinctively just pulling the trigger, and the ball was going over the bar consistently all season. And as I said earlier, for me as well, the leadership qualities that were starting to really shine. At a relatively young age, obviously he's been with us now for a long time, but at 24 years of age, you'd expect that maybe somebody's from a 27, 28 year old.
Yeah.
And so it's devastating for everybody, and Donegal will now just somehow or other have to try and find a way to get everybody together again ahead of Dublin.
It's a real shame because it felt like Donegal were right there as like that chasing pack of contenders. Everybody still has Dublin ahead of all the other teams on the basis of what they've done over the last 6 seasons really, but Donegal were right there, and they were they looked like they had the right game as well to take on Dublin.
No, I totally agree. I mean, going forward, they've been exceptional. Obviously, Fermanagh went in with a game plan, and once Donegal broke the resistance in terms of that, they just opened up and that free-flowing football going forward. And as you say, put Patrick central to that going forward, and just the way they're moving the ball, the pace and the intelligence behind the attacks. It is a big blow. There's no doubt about that. But what I would say is, as well, is they are Ulster champions, and that is a big thing, and it's a self-validation for a lot of the younger guys that haven't been there before. I was speaking to a lot of the senior players yesterday with a good drink in them from Donegal town. They decided let's make a few phone calls to Jim, and a lot of them were saying to me that it felt like the first one. And I thought that was brilliant, because it's been 4 years, 4 hard years, and final losses in between. And so it was just, it's great to get over the line and to be back in the winners' enclosure. And, if they can find a way to somehow come to peace with this, and I think Patrick will be central to that as well. How Patrick reacts to this will be important for the squad. Then they have built up a huge head of steam over the last number of months, and please God, now they can bring that into the Dublin game.
I compared Michael Murphy to LeBron James recently on the show, and I got a bit of grief for it from a few of the Kerry people who work with us. But I was making the point that he's legitimately the best footballer in the country. It's just that he had to be the best midfielder and the best full forward at the same time. So if he only played in one position, everybody would go, this guy is as good as anybody out there. There's nobody better than him. So he has to be two people and be a bit split.
Well, that's the first thing that came into my mind whenever I heard the news about Patrick, because obviously we were finding sort of the balance between, Jamie Brennan was supplementing Patrick, Kieran Thompson would come in, and or Morelos coming back in, and all of a sudden you had Leo coming from midfield, so all of a sudden you had a lot of attacking options that were supporting Patrick in the offensive part of the pitch, and then Michael was able to be a general in the middle of the park, and David Moran, obviously I can see where the Kerry people are come from. David Moran is an exceptional midfielder that has everything, if you like, but Michael is he's the glue that's keeping a lot of the parts together, and for me, what he brought to the table on Sunday was just his class, obviously, but also his leadership and composure, and just knowing when to go, knowing when to stay, taking the full back out of position, and the ability to get around the defence as a result of that. So there's so much to him, and he brings so much to the table. Now the question will be asked, obviously, will he have to be supplemented, between the full forward line and the middle of the field a wee bit more in the coming weeks?
A big challenge for Declan Butter. Before I leave Donegal, I do want to make one final point and ask you about the situation where they're through now as Ulster champions and they've got to face Dublin in Croke Park, but this is going to be the group where Dublin have 2 home games in Croker. I mean, obviously everybody pretends that Dublin don't play their home games in Croker, but the truth is they do play their home games in Croker. Is this fair?
No, I don't think it is fair, and I think I think it's a great opportunity for the GAA to say, a lot of these things, a lot of the problems and a lot of the issues that were raised over the last number of years was because Dublin had an unfair advantage, if you like, and this is an opportunity now where if they say that Dublin play their home game and their neutral game in Croke Park, I mean, we were the last team to beat them in 2014 in the championship, so are we seriously trying to suggest that they're going to get beaten twice in the space of a couple of weeks in Croke Park? So it's almost inevitable that Dublin will progress from this group if they're given 2 home games in Croke Park. And I think the right thing to do would be to play the game in Donegal, to play the game in Dublin, and you've got the neutral venue, Breffni Park, at Clonus. Can you imagine 40,000 people in Clonus for Donegal against Dublin, and what that would bring, to the whole country? It would be a real spectacle. And Jim Gavin has done an incredible job with Dublin, and sometimes they don't get the credit they deserve because people will say they have the money behind them, they have the juggernaut, they have the population base and all. And I think for them to go to Clonus or Breffni or somewhere like that and play in the Lions Den, if you like, in Ulster, and maybe come out the other side of that and show their absolute true colours in terms of the champions that they are, I think that would be good for Dublin, for Dublin's legacy, and good for football.
And good for that sense that everybody is involved in the same competition, that it's not already slightly rigged in favour of one team by virtue of the fact that the stadium they play in is in the city that they play out of.
Absolutely. I think it's a no-brainer in many respects, but let's see what happens.
The one final point on that is that, this isn't necessarily a criticism of the GAA. They put the fixtures up, and now that you're here, you go, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. We can change that, as opposed to, no, last year we wrote those fixtures down and we have to stick to them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and the bottom line is, there is the opportunity to do the right thing here, and I don't think Dublin would have mind. I'm being honest in that. I don't think Dublin would mind. I think they would embrace the challenge, and so protocol is protocol. But at the end of the day, if it's the right thing to do, then that's what should happen. I
wanted to talk to you a little bit about the attacking flair that we've seen across the course of the championship, and a lot of it has been Donegal, Kerry similarly, and okay, so the opponents that Kerry have faced haven't been great. But at the same time, they're definitely committed to a particular brand of football. Donegal are committed to a particular brand of football. Mayo are starting to rack up big scores as well. So has the pendulum swung away from the teams who have decided we're going to defend and learn how to defend? Are we beginning to see a more expressive type of Gaelic football?
I think so. I think you could be right, and I think that obviously every team has to cut their own cloth. Fermanagh went in with a game plan on Sunday, got a lot of criticism, my understanding is, for that. But the bottom line is, you've got 16 senior teams in Fermanagh, and had they gone in with any other game plan, the scoreline probably would have been more. Now, the purists will say, well, the scoreline was significant anyway. So these are the debates that will go on. The defensive system probably that we put in place and that was successful was underpinned with a huge amount of intensity and a huge amount on the transition, and I think the good teams in the country know that and understand that. And if you look at how quickly Dublin and Kerry and Donegal in particular go from one end of the field, from a defensive position to an offensive position, that's clear for everybody. And so there's principles there that can be adapted by every team, but you need good players, and Donegal now have a nice crop of young lads coming to supplement what they have. Kerry, obviously, it's well documented in terms of the underage success, and they're playing a certain brand. I played in Kerry myself, and it's as natural to kick the ball in Kerry as it is to fist the ball, and that's just because that's the way they play their football. Donegal, it's more natural for them to fist their ball in club football, but that's just the way they play their football, and so you can't be hypercritical of that. These are habits of a lifetime, if you like,
yeah.
and Dublin have their style and they've got their brand, and Jim Gavin, you'd have to say as well, has put his fingerprint on an existing brand. And so this is now we're not talking about football, we're talking about philosophy.
Yeah, well, that's it. So why do you think there's such a disconnect between the analysis of the teams and the fact that, like, this is, so it seems that a lot of the analysis is a moral judgment on a team's decision to play a particular style, as opposed to a here's why, here's how. In certain cases, in the one that gets the most debate and discussion about it, I don't understand why that is.
Well, I think if you go back and you look, say, the teams that have been successful with this system, it's lesser teams. So all of a sudden, then you've got all the lesser teams in the country going, well, maybe is there a chance that we could have a bit of that pie? Yeah. And I think when you're on the outside all the time and you're playing inter-county football for 10 years or 11 years or 12 years, and you don't even get that day in the sun ever, that's tough. And you're training as hard as anybody else is training in the country. And so if you're not creative in terms of what you bring to the table, and I made the point today in the article in the Times about Leash and the goalkeeper, and people were looking at it and they were going like, what the heck is he doing? But the reality was, they were pushing up very, very aggressively. It was always going to be a +1 with the goalkeeper, and so theoretically they should be able to get around the press. And if you don't have, the capacity to match up 15v15 because they just have better players and better, incredible athletes into the bargain. If you haven't got that capacity, then you have to think about the game laterally, and you have to think about the game how other ways to win the match. And that's what has happened in the last sort of 10 years. People are going, is there a way we can win? And so I get that, and I understand that because everybody wants to be there and be successful.
And that's why Carlow should have been celebrated as one of the stories of the summer. It's like they've taken their available resources and they've overachieved, which is really all any of us is trying to do in any walk of life.
Correct. And there is only so many Kerrys and Dublins and and these teams in any sport, and it's the same dynamic as well. If you look at other sport, it is the same dynamic at play, and so I think sometimes the criticism it can be over the top and it can be unbalanced sometimes, and everybody wants to see open football and high scoring football, and that is the reality. But when you're in a dressing room and you know that this is it and you're only going to get one chance at it, like ironically enough, the World Cup is happening now, and you see in these World Cup games there's more of an edge. Iran played last night, they're playing Portugal, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, that this is in or out, it's cut or thrust, and the players also know that this is their World Cup. In 4 years' time, the squad probably will have moved on. If you're an exceptional player, you might be part of the next one, but the high possibility you won't. So this is your one chance, and that's why you see these players doing things that they normally wouldn't do in 38 game league games over the course of a season.
That's where the madness comes from.
Exactly, and that's where the GAA sort of at its heart. That's where a lot of this stuff comes from. It's in the melting pot. It's cut or thrust, and it brings that out in players.
It's really quick in the Super 8s, but will the fact that there is another, you've got to manage your squad over those 3 games, will that have a minor impact on how mad some of these games get?
No, I absolutely think that. I think that, we were talking about Patrick earlier and the impact of an injury, and if you've got 1 or 2 injuries and you've got, again, you're one of the smaller squads and you don't have the luxury of 30 players and there's nothing between them. Yeah. If you've got 15 players and then by the time you get to the player 17, 18 and 19, and it's creating a lot of apprehension in your mind when you're sitting at home thinking about the team that you're going to pick. The intensity of the games and how quickly the games come up, I think will have an impact on the championship. And also, can just say on that as well, also I was looking at Dublin and their conditioning the last day, and I was looking at Kerry as well, and they looked, them 2 teams in particular, and Donegal, they all look as if they have got their timing right in terms of being there probably 4 weeks earlier than they would be every other season, in terms of they look really sharp, really fit, really strong, really aggressive, and so they've done a good job in the periodisation.
The one other thing that I wanted to ask you about was kickouts, and why so many teams are quite passive on the opposition kickouts, and even Leash seemed to be quite passive at the weekend. Why do teams sometimes decide that they're not going to attack a strength of a superpower? What are they afraid of?
They're afraid of the top quality goalkeepers on the opposition that can really, really hurt you. We spoke about Dublin there. If I'm going in to play Dublin in the morning, the first thing I'm going to think about is Stephen Cluxton. That is the very first thing. Now, that is an unusual dynamic. Normally it's the best player and the best full forward, but the first person you're going to think about is Stephen Cluxton. Now, you've got a question right away. How are you going to approach this? And if you do push up, and people will say, you've just asked me the question, why would they not just push up? The reality is you push 6 forwards on, maybe they drop a midfielder, and that's another one, and it creates this dynamic then that it's basically 1v1 in the middle of the park, and if he's good enough and to go over the press and that ball's won and you get a runner off that, it's a straight running goal.
Yeah.
And the goals that are being conceded in the championship at the minute are coming off kickouts across all the games, and so you have a moral dilemma. Now, the other side of that coin is if you say we're just going to concede the kick out to Dublin, it's a never ending story of possession, and over the course of 70 minutes, which is now 80 minutes, with the extra time that's been added on, that's very difficult, also. And so it creates this situation. The teams that are dropping off are normally big underdogs, and they're dropping off and they're saying, okay, listen, we're not going to take you on in the kick out, but we'll take you on by virtue of the fact that you've got to beat 15 of us to get to goal.
Yeah.
And it becomes very attritional. So you're sort of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in terms of your approach. We beat Dublin in 2014. We took them on the kick out. That was very high risk. That was very, very high risk because of the quality that he brought to the thing. They go short, they go medium, they go long on the diagonal, one ball, and it's in the back of the net.
If you think back to the Tyrone game last year, Cluxton's first kick out went over the press onto one of his players, and suddenly this game's over.
Yeah. And that's how quickly
first kick out, yeah.
Exactly. And for an underdog and then against the top teams, ultimately what you're hoping to do is get into the dressing room at half time, couple of points up, couple of points down, but still being in the game. And in fairness to Laois, it was a game in the first half last Sunday.
It looked like Dublin were a bit human in the first half in that game, and it looked like they were missing goal chances in the first game as well against Longford, but then they just started to clip points over in the second half, and you realise that maybe that was their early season wobble. And
yeah, I'd agree that to a certain extent, but I just think Laois asked a few questions of them. I think they caught them on the hop slightly in terms of going long. The quality of when they went long and the quality ball on the diagonal was something that had to deal with. It presented a few questions. Dublin got in at half time. They solved that problem. They had their players in position dropping back very quickly when the ball was in the air, and they kept picking up the brakes in the second half, and all of a sudden, tactically the game was done, and then they just started moving through the gears again then. And so you have to give Dublin credit as well. They solved the problem quickly, and then they were back where they needed to be.
Is that a template for other teams to look at? That's the bit that Laois got right?
Well, Dublin do give you chances to score against them, and if you look at the way teams have been successful against them, we look at Kerry in the league final a couple of years ago as well. They give you a chance to kick the ball, and if you're good enough to run at them, then you can get joy as well. And what I mean by that is you have to be good enough individually to beat your man individually for pace, or tactically running the ball with 2 and 3 and 4 players, and so the guy on the ball is the guy in control of the attack, and when he's closed down, then is there somebody quickly that you can release the ball to, who can carry the baton for the next period and get you further up the field. And so you've got to be extremely well coached in terms of how you run the ball, and you've got to be really good in terms of ball winners inside if you want to kick it, because Philly McMahon, he's big, he's strong, but he's also very, very quick.
Yeah. And
so you've got to match, and so that's why the Kingston brothers asked a lot of questions the last day, because they're a big frame, they're difficult to get around, and then the quality of the ball on the diagonal.
Last question: is it fair to say that the gap is closing a little bit, or does it still feel like Dublin are kind of half a lap ahead at the moment?
No, I feel Dublin are still ahead, but if I'm a Kerry person, I'm very, very excited about what I'm seeing. There's a rawness, there's a hunger there. I spoke about it as well today, about the ball that was turned over inside their own half with Darren O'Sullivan and James O'Donoghue working together to create that. And I think that is the game now. You bring everything you can offensively, but you've got to do it both ways as well, because teams are just so good going forward, and they're squeezing percentages every way they can, and so the game is getting better and better all the time in terms of the skill set of the players. Players are getting every generation. Players are getting more accurate. They're getting faster. They're getting stronger. They're getting more agile, and so it's becoming more and more difficult to defend.
But hang on, we're in a dark age for the sport. Apparently, if you read certain people, the game's never been worse. But it does really genuinely feel like the top games that we're seeing between the top 2 teams, the top 3 teams, when they play, is as good as any sport has ever been.
Well, if you take a snapshot of the 3 provincial finals of the weekend and you look at the highlights from them games and you look at the quality and the pace and the intensity and the scores on the outside of the boot and on the diagonal and all these scores and the goals, and if you took that and you played that 20 years ago to an audience and said, this is the future, people will be going, that is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
And in my lifetime, playing Gaelic football, from when I started, until I finished that 13-year period, the game completely changed, and more players are two-footed, so I think there's a lot of positives there also.
Jim, great stuff. Thanks a million.